You are now entering Nick and Mello's hyperspace.
Hello, I'm Carmelo, and I think my favorite Ahsoka episode is number 5, Shadow Warrior. There were lots of wonderful things in there, including the Purgills.
I'm Nick, and I think my favorite episode of Ahsoka was Dreams and Madness. What a fun
Mm.
episode.
In our journey through hyperspace, we examine everything and anything Star Wars from the point of view of two lifelong fans, one young, one old, who came together through the will of the Force.
And in this episode, we are going to be talking about, giving our thoughts about Ahsoka, which just wrapped up. As usual, we like to do these videos when the series is finished so we can kind of gather all our thoughts. And we're not much of speculators, so we want to just lay it all out there for you guys. So, Carmelo, why is Shadow Warrior your favorite episode?
You know, I'm a little tired of seeing Anakin. That's just me. But I loved the way they used him in that episode. It is the episode that I saw on the big screen. So Nick and I were just talking about that right before the show. It's like, well, that helped.
It
It was
helped.
wonderful to go see it at the movies and see it on a huge screen. And the Purgles have been a fascination of mine since they showed up on Rebels season 1. And so it was wonderful seeing lots of them, not just a few in the clouds or like in the episode 1 of season 3 of Mandalorian, where you can see them in the hyperspace while Grogu and Mando are riding the wave of hyperspace. But I thought it was really nice. I'm going to say it this way: it was really nice to have an episode that it was really about Ahsoka and about her past and her confronting the past. And I found that really, really interesting. And why is what is it called? Dreams and
Madness.
Madness your favorite episode?
Yeah, I think it is a episode with a lot of heart, a lot of humor, and I think it's a very just from start to finish. Like I felt like it was perfectly paced, a lot of good action, a lot of good character moments, and just a fun episode. And the way it ends, it's kind of like, where do we go from here? So I enjoy those kind of episodes. So that's my favorite.
It was interesting because so many of these shows have had a finale that is sort of 2 episodes long.
Mhm.
And so it was interesting that the episode that you prefer has sort of a completion. It sort of ends. It doesn't end with a cliffhanger. So it's a different way of storytelling that we have been seeing, for example, in Mandalorian, whereas episode 7 and episode 8 are usually a pair.
Mhm.
And here 7 sort of has a completion, and then 8 it continues the story, but it's not continuing from a cliffhanger from episode
Right.
7. And I actually enjoyed that. It was actually
Yeah.
a little more exciting to have some sort of an end in episode 7. So we're like, okay, so what's going to happen in episode 8? And
Yeah.
that was really quite fun. So what are your general thoughts without spoiling? And I realize when we talked about our episodes, we spoiled a few things,
We
but
spoiled a few things. I tried to keep mine
um,
minimum. So
we'll be okay. We'll be okay. So what are your general thoughts of the show?
um loved it in some parts. Didn't quite love it in some other parts. Um, I think there's a lot of great moments with the relationships between characters and some big highlights. Like I said earlier, some of the action I think was very fun, very classic Star Wars with some of the chases and some of the just fighting off stormtroopers and stuff like that. Like it was just really cool to see, and especially cool to see these characters that we followed for years in animation
Yeah,
finally show up
yeah,
in live action. So that
yeah.
was really nice. Like I said, there's some things that are confusing, maybe some choices that I didn't really understand or didn't get, but maybe we'll find out in the future movie that Dave Filoni's doing, or maybe
Right.
another series. We'll find out kind of what this is setting up. But season really kind of a lot of it felt like a setup for something bigger
Mhm,
for me,
mhm.
and it told a complete story. But still, there's so many dangling questions that I'm just like, a lot of the stuff didn't get resolved that I expected to get resolved.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I know that there are mixed reactions to Ahsoka live action. Um, but I really like her for 2 reasons. Number one, that woman can move.
she is very good.
Her battles were just the duels. There was just something really wonderful and powerful about the way that she did Ahsoka. I just thought it was just beautiful. It was just beautiful. The other one is that I really enjoyed, and this really started in The Mandalorian, but I have really enjoyed seeing a grown-up Ahsoka. And I'm totally blanking on the actress's name.
Rosario Dawson.
Thank you. I'm 58. Rosario Dawson has created this Jedi who is not a Jedi, but is a Jedi, but is not a Jedi, and a very wise woman. And I really like that. I think the issues that I have with the show are not really related to her, are more related to what they ask her to do. But I thought one of the things that I'm taking away from the show is that I really loved what Rosario Dawson has done with Ahsoka. I really like it. I really, really like it. I came with expectations that were probably too high. This was the show I had been waiting for since it was announced. Everything else was sort of like Boba Fett, sure, Kenobi, sure, I'll watch everything else. Even Andor, I was sort of like, oh, that'll be interesting. Didn't know I was going to be blown away. Well, with this one, I was sort of like, it just needed to be perfect, and I was disappointed. I think this week I was depressed because I was, in general terms, disappointed with what they chose to do with it. I'm not giving you sort of an absolute evaluation of the show. I'm telling you my reaction to the show, because there are some wonderful things about the show, but it was a little bit of a letdown for me.
I think I have to agree with you. I remember like the first two episodes that came out, a lot of people were blown away, and I thought it was really good. And I think I kept trying to remind myself like these characters, it's going to be different seeing them in live action versus animation. We followed them for years in animation, and it may take a while to get it used to. And a lot of times, like when we see favorite characters show back up or come back, they're not what we remember, or maybe they're slightly different, and doesn't take away from what we loved before, but it's kind of hard to top what came before. So like,
True.
To me, like I kind of in the back of my mind kind of thought that, whatever they do, I don't think I'm going to get the same emotional reaction maybe as I had from watching Rebels or watching Clone Wars. But it didn't take away from some amazing moments we did have in the show. I think the characters to me were all good. Like I didn't really have any issues with any certain characters. What those characters did or what they were in the position they were put in, that's kind of what bugged me a little bit about some of the story.
When I finished the show on Tuesday, I thought a lot about this sort of transition from animation to live action. I think the show proves how different storytelling is when you do live action versus animation. And I think the best example of that is Chopper.
Yes.
I think the Chopper that we get in a live action feels so muted compared to this devil of a droid in Rebels. And it just sort of felt like they sort of realized there are all of these things that Chopper does on an animated show in terms of his body language, the way he moves, the things that he does, that just didn't really make sense, or they couldn't really do them the same way in live action. And I think that is the one character in the transition that was the one that sort of proved to me, whoa, this is something else. We're not continuing the story of Rebels. We are shifting the story of Rebels to live action. And I think that is a really important difference. The goofiness of Chopper, there's a little spark here and there, but it was just not there. It was just not there.
Yeah, funny you say that because I was thinking about that too. I can only think of really two moments in this entire show where I was like, that kind of reminds me of Chopper. And other times I just feel like he's there. He's not really doing anything. He's just sitting in the back. I was waiting. I just wanted at least one scene in the show where he's on his front wheel and he's got two blasters. I just wanted him to go crazy and do something.
I needed Chopper to electrocute someone.
Yeah, I needed him to do something
and
wild.
when he's playing with Jason, I thought, oh, okay, this is where he's going to electrocute him, and they're playing like pre-kindergarten nice games, and it was sort of like that's not Chopper.
I was going to say, a friend of mine mentioned this to
He was
me.
just so inoffensive.
Yeah,
Chopper was so inoffensive.
a friend of
And
mine made the comment. He said, "Do you think having Jason around, maybe babysitting Jason, kind of softened him up a little bit? Maybe he's more of a, maybe he was like the party dad, and then when he became a dad, he's like, I got to be serious. I got to be
maybe,
maybe." That's
maybe
that's what I'm
I
telling
just,
myself in headcanon. So
yeah, yeah.
I agree. It was not the Chopper I was
I
expecting.
mean, I enjoyed seeing Ahsoka live action. I enjoyed. Sabine took me a little bit to get used to, but by episode 3, I was on.
Okay.
I thought the guy doing Ezra was marvelous.
Oh yeah, he was the
He's a wonderful, wonderful transition.
to me he
I
was the
never warmed up to Hera. I didn't dislike her, but there was something really warm about Hera in the animated show that I only saw glimpses of.
yeah.
I really like Hera when she is listening for the waves and then they realize they're lightsabers.
Hmm.
I thought that was a really beautiful moment and a very Hera moment.
Yeah.
Sort of like, I'm going to trust my son. He's force sensitive. I am not. Let's
Yeah.
go. But I didn't. I just never. I never warmed up to it, and we are doing spoilers, aren't we?
Wait a little bit. I was just thinking that. It's okay. It's okay.
Um.
If you made it this far and you're still listening,
Yeah,
then
I'm so
I
sorry,
think you're
guys.
you're I think you're going
I
to be
had
okay.
created a timer so we could sort of keep track of when we switch. But
It's okay. It's okay.
yeah, sorry, guys.
So I did want to add to your point though about Hera. Like you just mentioned with Chopper, like I kind of feel the same way about Hera, and that we see glimpses of her, moments of her that reminds me of her animated version. But like I know it's difficult because I think in animation, the style of like her big expressive eyes,
Yeah.
you know, things like that. Like there's no person on earth that has those big expressive eyes. Like we just there's not possible. But in the show, like those tender moments, I kind of see glimpses of it, but it didn't feel like Hera to me. I think she did okay. Like I don't think she was terrible.
No,
Um,
no, no.
but
I
I
don't think so
think,
either.
but I think those she had the kind of the humor of Hera down. I think like she was kind of the I guess since we're getting into spoilers, so some of her conversations with Mon Mothma, and she's talking about like, oh, yeah, Leia authorized that mission
Mm.
and things like that. Like that's so Hera, or I'm the general.
Yes,
I'm overriding this. Like
yes.
that's me. But like when she's okay, officially, I'm gonna just say it. This is spoiler territory,
Yeah,
so we
we
blew past that door.
accidentally
We
we
blew that door down. Sorry.
as RuPaul says, we fucked it up.
But the ending with very ending of the show with Ezra returning home didn't feel like Hera to me. That was the big one where I thought, oh, then it started making me retroactively think of other moments. I'm like, I'm not connecting with it.
I was reading someone, I don't remember who, online, and it was sort of like, why isn't Ezra taking the helmet off?
Yeah, it was weird.
That whole scene was, to me, it was not thought through. I mean, for 7 episodes, we've been looking for Ezra. She risked her position as a general to help find Ezra,
Mm-hmm.
and then all we get is a frozen Hera, and Hera doesn't do that. Those were the kinds of things that I just sort of found disappointing,
Mm-hmm.
really disappointing about the show. This is something that Nick and I discussed before the show, but I think it's important to mention it officially in the recording. We think that this was a show that could have benefited from more episodes and not just
Yeah.
8.
Yeah, I agree.
And we are, sort of wondering about the sort of production process of why is Andor getting 12 and Ahsoka getting 8
Mm-hmm.
and Kenobi getting 6 and Boba Fett getting 7. It just like I
Doesn't seem like there's a rhyme or reason.
there is Lucasfilm is a ridiculously secretive corporation. So we might be 95 or 96 when we finally reveal this information. But this was a show that could have used more episodes because I needed a little more time.
Mhm.
I needed a little more time. The last 2 episodes could have been 4 or 5.
Mhm. It kind of feels like a different show at one point. It's when finally it's like when Ahsoka and Huyang head to Peridia. That's kind of like, to me, that feels like one show, and then when they get to Peridia, it feels like a whole different show to me. It kind of splits it up to me, and
No, you're right.
if the whole first season of Ahsoka was just them getting to Peridia, and then maybe the second season was the aftermath of that. If there was, I don't know if there's going to be a second season, but if there's a second season, that to me would have made more sense. And then trying to cram it in one.
Right, but you needed to have Thrawn.
You did need to have Thrawn, yeah.
And so in order to have Thrawn, you need to go to the other galaxy. So we haven't talked about Thrawn.
We have not. No, you're not.
What were your thoughts on Thrawn?
I thought he was great. Like the voice, I love that voice of Lars Mikkelsen. Is incredible. People complained about the look, about his body shape or his uniform. I mean, just little things that like. The voice to me of Thrawn is the most important. Like I think as I sat with the makeup, at first the makeup looked a little odd. It looked a little too like light, but then I feel like as it went on, it got better. But I mean, he was great. I don't really have any complaints with him. I'm excited to see him in live action.
As you know, Nick, I had a little bit of trouble getting used to him the very first episode that he shows up, but after that, I was okay. I was totally okay. I actually like that he's thicker. Mm-hmm. He's been stranded in the planet
for 10 years.
And if you're a man like me and you get older, we all get slightly thicker. Mm-hmm. And this is part of what happens. This is part of what happens. And so I actually enjoyed seeing a little bit of the wearing down of Thrawn physically, mm-hmm. But this was still on.
I was going to say, Thrawn's never been a physically intimidating character. He's always been, his mind is his greatest weapon.
Exactly right.
Right. It's never worried about how strong he is or how fit he is. That's not right. Except in Rebels, he was pretty fit.
Well, we see him, and we see him training once, with droids. But it's not what makes Thrawn.
Right.
It's really not what makes Thrawn. There's that moment in the last episode when they're trying to catch the guys and they don't, and you see Thrawn's face sort of like twisting, sort of like, these Jedi need to be dead now. We need to get out of here. I love that moment.
Yeah, we're seeing him crack a little bit.
Oh, I just love seeing a little bit of vulnerability on Thrawn. That was just marvelous. I love that.
Cool.
It's probably my favorite Thrawn moment in the show. It really was quite wonderful. It really was quite wonderful. Let's talk about Baylan
and
Shin.
Yeah. So when I mentioned earlier about the show feeling like 2 different shows, they're part of the reason why I feel like it feels that way. I feel like the first 4 or 5 episodes, they're very integral and very massive into the plot. Yeah. And then as soon as they get to Pretty and we see Thrawn, they kind of get cast aside, and Thrawn's the big bad, which I'm okay with because I mean it's Thrawn, but I don't understand the purpose of them really in the show other than just be like adversaries for Ahsoka and Sabine. I know it's unfortunate Ray Stevenson passed, so we don't really know what the future of Baylan is.
Right.
It could be up in the air right now. They may not know. But to me, like, this was done, like you mentioned to me, this was done before he passed. This show was filmed, finished.
Yeah.
And
the writing was done long before he was dead.
Yeah, and to me, the way this show ends, it's like, I don't know what his purpose was in the show or Shin's. I don't know what their motivations are. I don't really know anything about them. To me, I don't learn their backstory, where they came from. I know he was a general in the Clone Wars, and now he wants power, but we don't know what kind of power he's at. It just, I got frustrated with them so much.
Oh, totally.
And by the last episode, I forgot
that last episode. It was sort of like,
are they in the show
still? I was really engrossed in what was going on in the episode, and then they show up towards the end of the show, and I'm like, wait a minute, are we not getting anything about these two? Yeah. And we got seconds, like literally seconds
Yeah.
on Shin and Balin. That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
That's it. And I was like, wait a minute. I mean, to me, Balin was the most fascinating new character in the show.
I agree.
And I am going to say that he was the most fascinating character, period. Because we know a lot about Ahsoka, we know a lot about all the other people, but he was so intriguing. And to just do a few seconds at the very end, I just found it really
Disappointing.
demoralizing
Yeah. Yeah.
because they were so big at the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
They
I mean,
were not
they
minor
opened the
characters.
show. They
They were
opened the
not
show.
minor characters.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They are the
Exactly.
first characters we see.
They're not minor characters.
No.
And ah, that's my review of Ahsoka. Because there was just so much that I don't know.
Yeah. I think I texted you this not long after I watched the show, but like I feel like the more they were in the show and the more they kept saying, we're after something, bigger than both of us, and just
Right.
the more that he kept talking vaguely about his plans, the more I getting annoyed with him. Like I'm just like, spell it out for us. Like, come on, I'm tired of beating around the bush. Tell me what you're doing. Give me a little bit of something. Like you're giving me nothing to work
Oh,
with.
interesting. That I was not bothered by it. To me, they were just so integral at the beginning of the show
Well, that's what I'm
that they're
saying.
disappearing at the end. I just there was no satisfaction there at all.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Um,
Like if they're front and center, they were in the marketing a lot. They were in the advertising of the show as
yeah,
like brand new characters, brand new
yeah,
adversaries.
yeah.
And to me, I didn't learn anything about them. I don't know anything about them. So like I don't
We know
really have
nothing about Shin. We know nothing about
nothing.
Shin.
Well, a little bit about Balin and his backstory, but
Yeah.
like to me, I don't have
Thanks,
enough.
thanks to Thrawn. Thank you very much.
Right. To me, I don't have enough to like care about them going forward. To me, like if they never,
Ah,
to me, if they
okay.
showed up again, it'd be nice. But like if they never show up again, I don't even think it would be that big of a deal. I think for me, I think I enjoyed Ezra Sabine a lot. Those two were probably my favorite parts of the show.
Mm,
Um, and I'm curious what you think. I've seen a lot of people complain online, which people do, but a lot of people have said that we know this show takes place shortly after Return of the Jedi, and Luke is still around.
right.
Do you feel? And I think we may have talked about this, but do you feel the existence of Ahsoka as a Jedi, Ezra as a Jedi, and now Sabine as a Jedi around this time, does it make Luke's story less important? Does it negate from what Luke was before or going forward? I don't know how you feel about the inclusion of them being around.
Ah, no, we have not talked about this.
Okay, I didn't remember if we did or
Um,
not.
I have seen some things online and a couple of podcasts that I listened to this week that sort of touched on this. You see, the problem is that at least in canon, let's not put the stories in the Zahn trilogy or anything like that. But at least in canon, we know very little of what Luke is doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's very interesting because when Luke appears in The Mandalorian and in Book of Boba Fett, he doesn't seem to be connected to the New Republic.
Mm-mm.
He seems to be interested in creating this new Jedi Academy for the future. And so I don't think that Ezra, Sabine, and Ahsoka diminish what Luke is doing because they're doing different things.
So I think.
They're doing different things. I think the only problem that I see with this crisscross is that, at least in the story, Leia is aware that Hera is aware that Thrawn is coming.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would assume that Leia would tell Luke
Well, and Ahsoka
that
and Luke
this
know each other.
person is coming. And so, unless Luke is going to get inserted into the movie and sort of join forces with Ezra and Sabine and Ahsoka and Quinlan Voss, who has survived Order 66. This is me wishing. Um,
One can hope.
um, so there may be something like that, but it just feels like at this moment they're doing different things.
Okay.
They're doing different things. I mean, the Luke that we see at the end of Mandalorian season 2, and the Luke that we see in Boba Fett, he's not connected to the New Republic at all.
Mm-mm.
There's nothing. There's nothing there. I think I'm going to put my psychoanalyst hat for a second. I think there's a lot of fans that feel that Luke should be the only Jedi around.
Yeah.
And if you have that sort of positioning, you're going to feel like Ahsoka and Ezra and Sabine are undermining the uniqueness of Luke as a Jedi post Return of the Jedi. That I can understand, but I just don't see it as undermining it because they're functioning differently in the story for me.
Mm-hmm.
For me, they're functioning differently in the way that they're presented.
Yeah, I think I agree with you mostly what you said, but like you mentioned, like Leia being involved now with Hera and kind of approving her mission, and I just find it odd that there's a galactic threat, and we know Luke was, I mean, he was actively in the rebellion and the face of the rebellion, and
Yep.
If a threat like that is coming, I just don't see how he would be able to not get involved.
Not get involved. Yeah.
Right. I mean, same with Leia and Han in the original trilogy. Like they're all working with the New Republic aside from Luke. So like, I just think it's just kind of odd. I think happening parallel. If this story took place, maybe I don't know, same time as like right after Rebels, maybe or during the war, maybe I don't know. I just feel Luke not being involved is a little odd, especially since he's the main character in a lot of people's eyes.
Well, this is when Star Wars hits a reality wall.
Mm-hmm.
And Ray Stevenson is dead, so we're not going to get any more Balin unless we hire another actor to continue the story.
Mm-hmm.
Mark Hamill is too old to do Luke Skywalker, and we could do a CGI Luke Skywalker. But Star Wars has been reluctant about doing that for long extended periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that.
Yeah.
There's sort of the mechanics of how do you insert all of this? If you were writing novels, there we go.
Oh,
Luke Skywalker would have been in the show in episode number 2.
Right.
But we're dealing with sort of human roadblocks.
Yeah.
About finding actors and doing that, and so there's a little bit of that to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so fans want Luke Skywalker, but they don't want CGI, and they want Leia, but they don't want CGI, and it's sort of like,
what do you do?
Which I thought that bringing 3PO into the story was a brilliant way of bringing Leia into the story
without
having to have Leia there, because Leia is too busy doing other things to show up to a hearing of a possible trial of this general. And so it sort of makes sense to had 3PO there doing that. That was I thought that was delightful.
Oh, I was gonna say that might have been the
delightful.
Most fist bumping. As soon as I heard the voice, I was like, oh, I got so excited. Like that was the most exciting part for me. I don't know why.
I didn't recognize the voice when he first spoke, but when I saw him behind, it was like, oh my God, look at that. It's 3PO. I was so excited.
If you know me, R2 and 3PO to me are Star Wars. They are
right.
They are so like anytime they show up, I remember R2 and Mandalorian. I was so excited. I was more excited for him than I was Luke. So, I mean, those two are Star Wars for me. So that seeing 3PO included, just even if it was just for a scene, was delightful. And Anthony Daniels returning was something I did not expect anymore. So,
I don't want to leave this episode without talking about the Night Sisters.
Oh yeah.
Because I really enjoyed them. And I thought it was a really interesting addition to the story.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, an homage to Clone Wars and a little bit to Rebels, of course. But I really love the addition of Thrawn using the Night Sisters. And you can also feel like the Night Sisters are using Thrawn. Mm-hmm. I love that moment when Thrawn says for the Empire, and then Elspeth says under her breath for Dathomir. So they seem to have like different ulterior motives of what they want to do. And so I enjoyed that very much. I've seen lots of things online about people. It's like, why would these Night Sisters obey Thrawn? Thrawn has no powers. But but I think there's a symbiotic relationship in here
Hmm.
because he has the clout of being a Grand Admiral of the defunct Empire,
Hmm.
and so he can use their magic, and they can use his clout
Hmm.
for doing what they want to do. And so I think there's a really fascinating alliance that is connected in there. And I really enjoyed the Night Sister subplot in the show. Really did.
Yeah, they were surprised. I didn't expect them to be involved at all,
Me
but
neither.
I
Me
and
neither.
we learned more about their history
Yes.
through Morgan, and they were good. And I really enjoy. I'm kind of curious to see the working relationship between them and Thrawn. You know, when he tells them to shoot down the fortress, they kind of give him a side eye, like, "What do you
They
mean?"
were not happy about that. Yes.
Yeah. So
Yes.
I think, and like you said, people online were complaining about why there's the Night Sisters, why are they, listening to Thrawn. I think they just know he's the way out of there, back to
Yeah.
Dathomir, and I don't think it's because of who he is. Maybe he has resources they can use. I think that relationship is going to be it's going to be active and happening until it's not beneficial for either, and
Correct.
we're going to see some tension, I'm sure. So
Absolutely. Oh, the
I'm very
tension is already there. It's
right.
just
That's
that
going to
it's
build.
not. It hasn't escalated yet.
Right,
It
it's
hasn't
going to build.
escalated yet.
But yeah,
And
they were a great addition, and I'm excited to see cosplayers try those. They're going to be really
I
cool.
I said somewhere online I want like 10-foot Night Sisters in the front of my yard for Halloween. I would
There you go.
love that. I would love that. I don't have
Here
time
you
to
go.
make them, but
Or the zombie
they're
troopers.
they're really the zombie troopers. Oh, we haven't talked about the zombie troopers.
Yeah, they were
Oh
cool.
my God, how many? It's like we could be talking forever about all this
Oh my
stuff.
gosh, I know.
Um, no, I'm not a zombie guy. I do
I'm
not
not
like
either.
zombies.
I'm not
I'm
either.
not. And I think I'm not a zombie guy because I'm so tired of seeing them everywhere.
Yeah.
I remember when they show up in Game of Thrones, it's like, what? And Lord of the Ring has them in a way, and they're
Mm-hmm.
just everywhere. But I really enjoyed these
Yeah.
because it's part of the tradition of the Night Sisters of bringing the
Mm-hmm.
dead back to life, but bringing instead of bringing sisters, bringing back soldiers. That was really awesome, and the whole idea of the soldiers volunteering for it,
Mm-hmm.
because there's that moment when they said, they know what they're
Being asked.
volunteering
Yeah.
for. They're being asked to do, and so I love that. That was really interesting to me. To me.
And time for Halloween too. So perfect.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah.
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 Right at the beginning of October, you get
Yeah. Night
your
sisters
zombie.
and
What are they called? Night troopers.
night troopers. Yeah.
Night troopers, like
Get
Night
all that.
Sisters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think overall, I was looking for something else.
Yeah. I had
And I
fun.
was I was frustrated. I
I
really
had
was frustrated. And yeah, I was just frustrated.
I had fun watching the show week to week, and it was fun. And just execution of some things could have been better, or like we said, maybe more episodes could have helped. One thing I want to touch on before we wrap up, though, is
Yeah.
the relationship between Ahsoka and Sabine. To me, was probably my favorite part of the show. That master apprentice, I thought it was really well
Mm.
handled. And to me, one of the biggest surprises was Sabine staying back with Ahsoka. Um, and
Uh-huh.
it was set up
Yes.
beautifully earlier in the episode, and it paid off really well. And just that ending was like bittersweet to me, with them being stuck on Peridia.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know. That was I understood why they got stuck there, but it was one of those moments where I was really annoyed.
I still don't know what to think about democratizing the force so somebody who doesn't even have the force can develop the force.
Interesting.
I don't know what to think about that. I really like the relationship between Ahsoka and Sabine, and I actually enjoy the idea of training someone who is not force sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
That I found really interesting. But the moment that she can use the force, sort of like, in The Incredibles, where the villain is sort of saying, when everybody's special, then no one is.
Mm.
That's sort of the way I
Syndrome.
feel about Sabine. That so everybody can
And
eventually
that's
access the force.
well,
And so in a way, it sort of takes away from the sort of specialness of what it means to be force sensitive.
I think I'm the opposite with you. I think I enjoy it.
Okay.
I I really, because like in Rebels, Kanan, Hera says to Kanan, "You're treating her like this because she's not force sensitive." But Kanan says, "No, everybody's force sensitive. You just have to be open to it."
Yeah, I know.
And I enjoy that. I enjoy the kind of concept of it's kind of like Spider-Man and Into the Spider-Verse that anybody can wear the mask. Anybody can be her. It can be anybody. And I think Star Wars kind of same message. Like anyone can be open to it. I like it.
I don't disagree with that. I just don't know what to make of the consequences of that decision.
Now, if it gets to the point where half the galaxy has it, then that's different. But I think right now it's okay because I think they're the characters that we know are able to access the Force and use the Force.
Right.
They're trained, they're disciplined, and I think for Sabine, a lot of it was a mental block. That's why she
Yes.
could not use the Force. And I think
Right.
same with Den using the dark saber. It was a mental block why he never
Right.
was able to use it. And I
Right.
think
Right.
that part of Star Wars I like the consistency of. So
Okay. All right. We could keep going, but
We
I think
could.
we've hit like almost
we hit a
40
wall. Yeah,
we gotta move on. Thank you everybody for being so patient with us. It was an interesting experience.
I'll be curious to see where this goes.
And it's been really mysterious because it's been almost a week since the show ended, and we haven't heard anything about what's next.
Mm-mm.
Like nothing. So I'm sort of curious about the silence. We'll see what happens.
We'll see.
May the Force be with everybody, since now everybody has the Force. Take care, guys.